The sun was nothing but a red eye on the horizon when the truck screeched to a stop in the middle of the Sierra Tarahumara. Teotl's forehead slammed into the window. He blinked hard, heart-pounding. Dust swirled outside like smoke curling into the cab through the cracked windows. "Out," said Leonor Navarro, her voice as dry and sharp as the land. Teotl looked around. There was no road anymore, just a rough trail swallowed by the desert. No trees, no people, no buildings. Just earth the color of bone and sky the color of an old bruise. Yunuen, still asleep, leaned into his shoulder. Her small hand was wrapped tightly around his fingers. Teotl turned to Leonor in the front seat. "Where are we?" She didn't answer. She climbed out, slammed her door, then yanked open the back. Yunuen jerked awake with a soft gasp. She clung to Teotl, blinking in confusion. Leonor threw a ragged backpack into the dust. "This is it," she said. "You've got 3 months. After that, the bank takes everything." "I don't understand." Teotl's voice cracked. "What is this place?" She pointed toward a shadow in the distance, barely visible beyond the scrub. "That was your father's land. Now it's yours." For a little while anyway, a gust of wind carried the smell of manure rust and something worse like rot. Yunuen tugged on Teotl's sleeve. "It smells bad here." Leonor crouched so they were face to face. Her lips curled into a smile that wasn't a smile. "You want the truth, Niño. Your father died and left nothing but dirt. No money, no future. Just this piece of shit ranch. You can't leave us," Teotl said, stepping in front of Yunuen. "I already did," she said. This is me doing you a favor." Teotl stood frozen. His legs trembled, but he stayed upright. He was 9. He didn't know what it meant to be a man, but he knew what it felt like to be the only shield left. Leonor's eyes narrowed. "You're not even real mestizos. Your dad was Raramuri, half savage, and so are you. This land is all the dirt your kind deserves." The words hit harder than her open hand ever had. Teotl didn't cry. He didn't look away. Yunuen began to sob quietly behind him. Leonor stood. "If you die out here, no one will know. No one will care." She got back in the truck. "Wait," Teotl said. He chased her bare feet, slapping against the hot dust. "Please, don't leave us here." But the engine roared to life and she was already turning the wheel. The tires spat rocks into his shins. Yunuen screamed as Teotl ran, shouting her name. He ran until the dust burned his throat and the truck vanished behind the hills. Then it was just silence. No birds, no engines, just the wind humming low through the scrub like it was humming a warning. Yunuen collapsed beside him, curling into a ball, shoulders shaking. Teotl sank to his knees. The horizon spun. They were alone. He didn't know how long they sat there. Minutes, hours. Time melted in the heat. Eventually, Teotl stood. His knees buckled but held. He lifted Yunuen to her feet. She clung to him, her face buried in his neck. He grabbed the backpack from the dust, so light it might have been empty. He stared toward the shape Leonor had pointed to. "Come on," he said. She shook her head. "We have to see what's there. Maybe there's something. I'm scared." "Me too." She sniffled, looked up at him with wide, dark eyes, then nodded. Together they walked through the brittle grass and low thorns. Thorns scraped their legs. Their lips cracked in the heat. By the time they reached the crumbling structure, the sky had turned orange and purple. The building looked worse up close. An old adobe house half collapsed. The roof sagged like a broken back. Doors hung off rusted hinges. Teotl stepped inside first. Dust exploded from the floor. Bats shrieked and scattered. Yunuen screamed and ducked behind him. "It's okay," he said, voice shaking. "They're just bats. That means this place was dry enough to live in. That's good, right?" He didn't know if it was true, but he needed it to be. There were 3 rooms. One was empty except for a mold-eaten couch. Another had a brick stove, dead insects stuck in webs like tiny bones. The last one was a stable. A soft sound came from inside, like air being slowly squeezed from a bellows. They stepped closer. There in the far corner, lying on a bed of foul, dry straw, was a horse. No, the horse. Estrella. Her coat was once chestnut, now patchy and gray with dust. Her flank rose and fell too fast. Her back leg was swollen, the hoof cracked, and a dark wound glistened with pus. The smell was unbearable. Yunuen gripped her brother's hand. "She's sick." Teotl stared at the animal. She lifted her head slowly, eyes meeting his. There was pain, yes, but there was something else, too. Recognition. Did she know Papa? Yunuen whispered. A photo in the journal later would prove she did. But for now, Teotl only felt something in his chest shift. The stable had nothing. No water, no food. Just an overturned bucket and an old toolbox full of rust. They had no idea how to help her. Not really, but they stayed. Yunuen found a blanket in a back room and laid it next to Estrella. She curled beside her, small hand resting on the horse's neck. The horse shuddered, then relaxed. Teotl dug through the backpack. There were matches, a lighter, a half-used candle, 1 can of beans. 1. He sat with the candle lit beside him, thumbing through the papers they'd found in a sealed wooden box in the stable's corner. 1 leather-bound notebook was marked in bold script, "Para mis hijos." Inside a page had a single line written across the top. "Todo lo que necesitan está en la tierra que heredan." Everything you need is in the land you inherit. Teotl didn't feel strong. He felt like crying, but he turned the page. Somewhere past the dark past, the stench and the rot was something worth finding. Estrella groaned. Yunuen shifted in her sleep. The desert wind pressed against the cracked walls. Teotl closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd find water. He had to. Papa didn't leave us with nothing. He just buried the map in the dust. Teotl whispered it out loud, almost like a prayer, as the candle burned low beside him. The notebook on his lap felt warm from his skin, the pages rough and thick like bark. His thumb moved over the words again and again. The script was unmistakable, his father's. Bold, steady, like him. Yunuen slept, curled beside Estrella, who no longer groaned in pain, just breathed quietly, shallow and slow. Her head rested on the straw, and one of Yunuen's fingers was still tangled in the coarse mane. Teotl couldn't sleep, not with that line repeating in his head. Everything you need is in the land you inherit. He turned to the next page. A diagram sketched in ink showed the layout of the ranch, as it once was, fenced. Pastures, vegetable rows, a well, an irrigation line. The buildings were labeled. Most were gone now, but the Pozo Viejo, the old well, was marked clearly about 50 meters from the stable near a rocky patch behind what used to be a chicken coop. He reached for the second notebook. More diagrams. Notes in 2 languages, Spanish and Raramuri. One section was labeled Agua el alma de la tierra. Below it more text. When the rivers vanish and the rain forgets you, listen to the earth. It will show you where she hides her veins. There was a drawing of a Y-shaped stick, a divining rod. He looked over at the backpack. A lighter, a knife, a cracked mirror. No food, no rope, no stick. Teotl stood slowly, muscles stiff from cold and fear. The wind outside had picked up. It moaned across the walls like a coyote calling to no one. He wrapped himself in his father's old flannel shirt, found in a trunk under a collapsed shelf, and stepped into the night. The desert stretched in all directions. Black outlines of mountains cut the stars in jagged lines. The ground crunched beneath his bare feet. His breath clouded in front of him. He moved past the ruined chicken coop toward the place marked in the notebook. His eyes scanned the ground. There, a mesquite tree still alive, its twisted branches reaching out like fingers. He broke off a branch shaped like a Y and stripped the thorns. The wood was hard, dry. He held it in both hands and looked around. Everything was silent but the wind. He walked slowly, holding the rod loosely as the drawing showed. Nothing. He circled left, then right. Walked slower. Still nothing. His arms started to ache. The rod was just a stick now, nothing more. Then he saw it. A patch of weeds greener than the rest clumped around a depression in the ground, the same as in the drawing, a place where moisture lingered. He stepped closer. The stick in his hands shifted. At first he thought he imagined it, but then it moved again just slightly. A gentle tug downward. His hands clenched. He dropped to his knees and started digging with both hands. The earth was tough, dry for the first inch, but then cooler, softer. Mud. He sat back, heart hammering. He had no bucket, no rope, no pulley, but he had proof, water. Teotl raced back to the stable. The sound of his footsteps woke Yunuen. She sat up, hair wild, eyes wide. "Where were you? There's water," he panted, holding up his muddy hands. "I found it. We have to dig." "Now," he nodded. "Before the sun's up." She stood without arguing, rubbing sleep from her eyes. They found a rusty shovel behind the stable. Teotl dug first, his hands blistering fast. Yunuen took turns with him, scooping with a dented metal bowl. The sky turned from black to deep blue, then pink, then gold. An hour passed, then 2. At 1/2 meter deep, the earth turned to clay. At 1 meter, water pooled in the bottom. Teotl laughed, a wild, ragged sound. He cupped it in his hands. It was warm, cloudy, but real. They filled the old bucket and carried it to Estrella. She didn't move at first. Then her nostrils flared. Yunuen placed the bucket close. "Come on," she whispered. "Please." Estrella lifted her head. Her lips touched the water. She drank. Slowly, then desperately. Teotl leaned against the wall and covered his face with both hands. They weren't going to die today. They heated water in a tin can and cleaned her wound as best they could, copying the instructions from the notebook. Teotl didn't know what all the words meant, but the drawings helped. Yunuen gathered prickly pear fruit from outside and mashed it into paste, like the journal said, spreading it on the inflamed skin. Estrella flinched but didn't kick. By noon, they had water-boiling wounds cleaned and the sun climbing mercilessly overhead. Yunuen sat beside Estrella, legs tucked beneath her. "You think Papa knew?" Teotl looked up from the notebook, "that she'd still be here?" He nodded slowly. He had to. Yunuen rested her cheek against Estrella's side. She waited. Teotl didn't answer. His throat was too tight. He opened the next page of the journal. There were entries about fencing, animal care, and crop rotations. But what caught his eye now was a list neat and clear titled Rutas para sobrevivir los primeros 30 días. 30 days. The words grounded him. A plan. But it also meant 30 days wasn't survival. It was just the beginning. Yunuen had fallen asleep again. Estrella was dozing too, belly slightly rising and falling. Teotl stood. He walked outside and stared at the mountains. A hawk circled high above, wings stretched wide. Behind him, the ranch was still broken. The fences collapsed, the fields empty, the walls cracked. But now one thing was true: the earth had not forgotten them, and if the earth remembered, maybe others would too. Then he heard it faint at first, then louder. A motor, he squinted, a pickup truck, old, brown, dusty. It rolled down the trail, slow, deliberate. Teotl's chest clenched. Was she back? He stepped forward, hands fisting. The truck stopped 20 feet from the house. The engine cut. An old man stepped out, leaning on a cane. His white hair was tucked under a flat-brimmed hat, and he wore boots caked in dirt. He carried a bag slung over his shoulder. Worn leather. Medical, maybe. He looked directly at Teotl. "You the boy taking care of the horse?" he asked, voice low and rough as gravel. Teotl didn't answer. The man smiled just a little. "I'm Tacho Morales, vet, retired. Doña Lucha told me someone bought feed a few weeks ago. Said it didn't make sense." Teotl's mouth was dry. "She sent you?" "Didn't have to," the man said. "I've got eyes." He stepped forward, eyes scanning the broken fence, the half-dug well, the bucket. "And I've got questions." Teotl squared his shoulders. "So do I." The rod trembled. The ground spoke, and we listened. Tacho Morales knelt by the well, dipping his hand into the murky water and rubbing the grit between his fingers. The lines on his face deepened as he examined the pale mud. He didn't say much, just looked like a man used to watching animals to know the truth. Then he stood and scanned the surroundings, broken fences, torn up earth bones of buildings long collapsed. "How long has the mare been like this?" he asked without turning. Teotl watched him warily. 3 days since we got here. And before that, I don't know." Tacho exhaled through his nose. "You treat the leg, we cleaned it. Put prickly pear paste, like my dad's notes said." The old man paused. "Your father's notes." Teotl handed him the journal. Tacho flipped it open, his expression unreadable. His eyes moved down the page over the diagrams and handwritten instructions. He stopped when he reached the title Guía de Supervivencia para mis hijos. He closed the book slowly and handed it back. He was smarter than most. Teotl took it like it was glass. "You know what happens to a horse without water?" Tacho asked. "She dies." Tacho nodded, and to 2 kids without help, Teotl didn't answer. Tacho looked at him. "Why didn't you run into town?" "To the police." Teotl squared his shoulders. "Because she said no one would believe us, and I didn't want them to split us up." Tacho stared at him a moment longer, then gave a slow nod, almost like approval. He motioned toward the stable. "Show me the leg." Inside, Yunuen was still sitting beside Estrella, stroking her neck. She blinked sleepily as Tacho entered. The old man crouched next to the mare and began examining the wound with practiced hands. He didn't flinch at the smell or the sight of infection. He poked, pressed, peeled back old gauze. "She's tough," he said. "Could have died a week ago." "She didn't," Yunuen whispered. "No," Tacho agreed. She waited. He stood again and looked between the siblings. "I can help you keep her alive, maybe more, but I don't work for free." Teotl's eyes narrowed. "We don't have money. Didn't ask for money. Then what you work? You learn. You don't lie to me, and if I see you giving up even once I walk." Teotl looked to Yunuen. She nodded without hesitation. "Deal," he said. Tacho dropped his bag onto the floor. "I'll need to bring back supplies. Antibiotics, gauze, real food for the horse. You're coming back, I said. I don't work for free. This is payment too. I'm an old man. I don't like the idea of the world swallowing kids like you." He picked up the shovel from the corner and looked at Teotl. "Come with me." They walked out to the edge of the field where the water well still held. Tacho pointed at the divining rod lying near the hole. You use that, Teotl nodded. You believe in that kind of thing I don't know. My dad said it wasn't magic. He said it was about knowing what to look for. Tacho grunted. Smart man. He looked over the land, then back to Teotl. You do that again tomorrow. Look for another spot. You're going to need more than a trickle if you plan to stay. Teotl nodded. Okay. Tacho started to walk back toward his truck, but paused. The girl. She knew about the prickly pear. Teotl hesitated. She just knew. Tacho didn't smile, but his voice softened. Then there's someone else she needs to meet. The truck disappeared in a cloud of dust again, but this time it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like a promise. That night, they boiled more water, used clean strips from an old sheet to rewrap Estrella's leg, and cleaned the stable enough to sleep without choking on dust. Yunuen sat against the wall, arms around her knees. He's coming back, yeah. He didn't say he would tell anyone. Teotl poked the fire with a stick. I think he's waiting to see if we're worth saving. She didn't speak after that. By morning, Estrella was breathing easier. She even raised her head without help. Teotl returned to the mesquite grove and cut a second divining rod. The ground was already beginning to crack from the heat. He walked slowly, letting the branch sway in his hands, listening not with his ears, but with everything else. Like his father had written, Las plantas te dicen donde fluye el alma de la tierra. There near the old fence post, a cluster of grasses greener than the rest. The rod twitched. Teotl dropped to his knees. He dug with the old shovel. The sun climbed fast. His arms burned. Blisters burst and stung. Yunuen brought water from the first well, wiping his face when he stopped to breathe. The shovel hit something hard, stone or old clay. Beneath it, dampness. Not a stream, not yet, but a promise. They sat side by side, watching water pool again. We'll have to find a way to bring it to the stable, he said. We can dig a trench. He nodded, and fixed the gutters for rain. They sat there, the silence now more like peace than fear. A cloud passed over them, then another. Teotl looked up. The sky had turned from blue to gray. Yunuen blinked at him. Is that rain? A fat drop smacked the back of Teotl's neck. Then another, and another. The sky opened. They laughed, ran, danced barefoot in the mud, lifting their arms to the sky. Even Estrella neighed softly in the stable as water drummed on the tin roof. They set out every pot and bowl they could find, catching what they could. When it was over, they stood soaked, breathless, grinning like fools. That was her, Yunuen said. Hu abuela. Or maybe papa. Someone told the clouds. Teotl didn't answer, but he didn't argue. That evening, just as the light faded, another truck arrived. A woman stepped out. She walked slowly, leaning on a carved walking stick, her braids streaked with silver. Her skirt swept the dirt like wind over corn leaves. She looked at Yunuen, then at the herbs drying near the stable. Then she smiled. I am Ma'ara, she said, voice like gravel softened by time. Tacho says the girl listens to the plants. Yunuen stepped forward, eyes wide, her hands still damp with rainwater. I hear them sometimes, she whispered. Ma'ara reached out and touched her forehead with one rough finger. You were born remembering. Now you must learn to listen deeper. I didn't ask permission to come in because you'd already stepped into my heart without warning. Tacho Morales' voice didn't rise above the sound of the wind, but it still quieted the air around him. He stood by the doorway of the stable, arms crossed over his chest, watching Yunuen sit cross-legged in the straw. Her hand rested gently on Estrella's neck. Her eyes closed, humming something soft and strange, half a song, half a whisper. Ma'ara sat beside her, still as a stone. Her carved walking stick lay across her knees. The shawl draped over her shoulders shifted, with the breeze revealing long braids, threaded with pieces of dried sage. Teotl hovered near the door, unsure if he was supposed to be there. He felt like a trespasser in his own space. The stable, the ranch, the books, the silence, everything had changed again. She hears the root's breath, Ma'ara said, without opening her eyes. Not clearly yet, but it's there. Yunuen opened her eyes slowly. The horse feels lighter now. Ma'ara gave a small nod. Pain is a loud thing. When it quiets, we notice other sounds. Tacho leaned against the doorframe. Found her like this last night. Singing to the horse in a language I don't know. It's not yours to know, Ma'ara replied, still calm, still unmoved. It's hers to remember. Teotl stepped forward finally. Are you going to take her somewhere to train her? Ma'ara turned to him. Her eyes, black as obsidian, held no sharpness but no softness either. Just age, weight, knowing. She's not a chicken to train or a student to scold. She's a vessel. She stays where she is. I'll come to her. You live close, Ma'ara tilted her head. Close enough when needed. Far enough not to be expected. Yunuen smiled at that. Tacho straightened. You want them to make it here, you'll need more than songs. They need structure. Structure, Ma'ara repeated, testing the word like it was unfamiliar. And you're the one to give it, Tacho shrugged. I taught half the ranchers in this valley how to birth a calf without killing it. I've got time, and a grudge against death. Then we work together, Ma'ara said, as if it had already been decided long ago. You teach the boy, I teach the girl. Teotl frowned. Why not both of us together? Because your path is through hands, she said. Hers is through heart. They start in the same place but split like river forks. You'll see. Ma'ara stood slowly, as if her bones were remembering how to move. She brushed off her skirt and reached into a small pouch tied at her waist. She pulled out a bundle of leaves bound with twine and handed it to Yunuen. Steep this in warm water. Let Estrella breathe it. Don't force. Just let her smell. The roots will do the rest. Yunuen took it with both hands, nodding solemnly. Tacho cleared his throat. While you're at it, you might want to sweep this place. Smells like goat piss and ghosts. Yunuen laughed the soundlight and sudden. Teotl smiled, watching her tuck the bundle of herbs into the folds of a blanket. Ma'ara turned to go, but stopped at the door beside Teotl. She believes in you. That's heavy, he swallowed. I know, good, Ma'ara said. Don't drop it. She left without another word, walking straight into the sun without squinting, as if even the light didn't dare block her way. Tacho clapped his hands together. All right then, you want this place to live, we start today. Grab a notebook. Teotl blinked. Now, yesterday, last week, take your pick. But since we've only got now will do. They sat at the rickety table outside the stable. Tacho laid out a rough lesson plan, like he was teaching a soldier, not a boy. Animal anatomy, parasite cycles, hoof care, vaccine storage. Teotl scribbled fast, not wanting to miss a word. Taco pointed at a spot in the notebook. What's the resting heart rate of a healthy horse? I don't know. Then write that down. Knowing what you don't know is how you start. Most fools never learn that. Inside the stable, Yunuen brewed the herb bundle in a tin pot. Steam curled into the air like threads of smoke. Estrella stirred, lifting her head, nostrils flaring. She didn't drink, just breathed deeply. See, Yunuen whispered. She remembers, too. When Tacho was done drilling Teotl for the afternoon, he took him around the edges of the ranch. They examined fence lines, checked the soil near the collapsed garden beds, looked for tool salvage in the ruined barn. "You want this land to live," Tacho said, squatting down to touch the hard-packed earth. "Then stop treating it like dirt. It's not a thing under your feet. It's a thing that breathes. You walk wrong, it remembers." Teotl frowned. "It remembers," Tacho nodded. "You ever fall asleep after hurting someone and feel it crawl back into your dreams? The land's like that. You take from it, it takes from you." That night, Yunuen drew her own lines in a battered journal. She wrote down plant names Ma'ara had whispered to her, drawing little pictures of leaves, roots, seed shapes. She asked the names out loud, as she did repeating them until her voice became a rhythm. Teotl sat beside her with his own notebook dog-eared and already smudged with dirt. "I don't get it," he said, flipping to a page on calf birthing positions. "How did Papa learn all this? He never showed me any of it." Yunuen shrugged. Maybe he knew he wouldn't get to. He looked down. "But he left it," she said, tapping her fingers on the spine of the journal. "He left it so you could learn when it was time." That thought stayed with him long after the fire burned low. At dawn, they woke to Estrella trying to stand. Her legs wobbled, her breath hitched. Teotl rushed to her side, bracing her shoulder. "She's trying," he said, eyes wide. "She's ready," Yunuen whispered. "She just needed time." They got her on her feet, slowly, carefully, with soft commands and gentle pushes. When she finally stood, the three of them just stood together, boy, girl, horse, quiet, full of something too big for words. Tacho returned mid-morning with gauze antibiotics, a sharp blade for trimming hooves, and a sack of oats. Behind him, walking 2 steps behind, was a young woman with broad shoulders and arms like she'd hauled feed bags since she could walk. "This is Doña Rosa's niece," Tacho said. "She's got some fencing tools and a mouth that doesn't stop. She'll help you fix what you broke." The woman tossed a coil of wire at Teotl. "Name's Izel. If you've got soft hands, I'll know in 10 minutes." Yunuen laughed under her breath. Teotl caught the sound and felt his ears go warm. "Let's get to work," he said, because now finally it felt like they had more than hope. They had help. "The plants speak to you if you don't scream with your fear." Yunuen said nothing when Ma'ara placed the bowl in front of her. Just the scent of the brew inside, steeped herbs, bark, a handful of wild seeds made her hands sweat. Not from fear exactly, but from something close. Awe, maybe. Or something older than that. "Drink half. Let the rest cool. Pour it at the roots of the piru tree out front." Yunuen hesitated. "What does it do?" Ma'ara's eyes softened. "Opens the door. Not everyone sees what's behind it, but the door opens all the same." She took the bowl and drank. The taste was bitter, dry, and green, like chewing on rain that hadn't fallen yet. Her mouth tingled. Her ears buzzed. But she didn't cough, didn't flinch. She swallowed every drop. Then she stood, bowl still in hand, and walked barefoot out to the tree Ma'ara had planted the week before. Twisted, thick-trunked its leaves, trembling in the wind like they were whispering. She poured what was left into the earth at its base. When she turned around, the world felt closer, not louder, not brighter, just closer. The wind brushed her cheek like a mother's hand. The dust spun in small, deliberate spirals at her feet. Somewhere in the field, a goat bleated, and it didn't sound like a sound. It sounded like a word, a complaint. She walked back slowly, hands tingling. Teotl was at the corral with Izel restapling the crossbeams of a collapsed fence post. He was sunburned shirt stained with sweat and still swinging the hammer like his bones depended on it. "I think that one's cracked," he said, pointing to a rail. Izel snorted. You think you watched me crack it? Teotl grinned. Then maybe don't miss so much. You're lucky I like your sister, or I'd break your thumb next. They both looked up as Yunuen approached. Her steps were quiet, measured. You look different, Teotl said. She blinked. You look like the desert told you a secret, and now you won't tell me. She smiled. That's because it did. Izel raised an eyebrow. We're doing cryptic witch stuff now. She's not a witch, Teotl said. She's a curandera. Izel nodded. Okay, cool. Still gonna call you cryptic. Yunuen didn't mind. She looked around the land like it was breathing with her. Later that day, Ma'ara taught her how to gather medicine without insulting the plant. You ask before you take, she said, kneeling by a cluster of wild mint. You introduce yourself. You explain what you need. You wait for permission. Yunuen crouched beside her and mirrored the movements. She cupped her hands around the stalks and whispered, I'm Yunuen. I'm learning. I want to help. The wind shifted. A single leaf fell from the tallest stem and landed on her knee. Ma'ara smiled. That'll do. They worked until the light faded, gathering small bundles of herbs, yerba Santa Manzanilla Hoja de Castilla. Yunuen learned their names in both Spanish and Raramuri. She repeated them like songs, not just the names, but what they did, what wound they soothed, what pain they lessened, what part of the plant held the power. Back at the stable, Estrella was already standing when they returned. Her limp had eased. Her breath was steady. Yunuen pressed her palm to the mare's side. She's stronger today. Teotl nodded. She walked the full fence line with me this morning. He didn't say it out loud, but he watched his sister differently now. She moved like she carried something inside her no one else could see, and it made him both proud and scared at the same time. That night, while Izel boiled water for the oats and Tacho sharpened a rusted hoof rasp on a stone, Teotl sat alone with his father's journal. The ink was faded, but the intent behind it still burned. Day 12. If the well is low and no rain comes, dig a new one near the iron post. The water always runs deeper where roots once were. He closed the journal slowly, chewing the edge of his nail. Something wrong, Tacho asked, not looking up from the rasp. There's another spot for water, Teotl said, near the old mesquite line. But the well's shallow. It's turning brown. Tacho wiped the rasp clean. Then tomorrow we dig. You'll help, of course not, he said. I'm old. I'll supervise and call you names if you mess up. Yunuen grinned from the fire pit. That's his love language. Damn right it is, Tacho muttered. Before bed, Ma'ara handed Yunuen a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside was a curved knife no bigger than a finger. The handle was wrapped in red thread. There were markings carved into the blade. This is for harvesting roots. Never use it in anger. Never forget where each cut goes. Yunuen held it gently. Thank you. Ma'ara's hand rested on her shoulder. You're almost ready for the real work, but before you heal others, you must meet your own fear. That night, Yunuen dreamed she was buried to her chest, in dry earth arms, trapped mouth open but silent. Roots wound around her ribs, pulsing gently, and from deep below a voice rose, not speaking, not singing, just being. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She listened. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears, but her chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. Teotl was already outside by then, shoveling the edge of the new well. Izel had joined him, her boots caked in mud hair tied back with a leather cord. She worked without complaining, her movements efficient. I didn't think you'd come back today, Teotl said. Didn't come back for you, she replied. Came for the goat you owe me. We don't have goats. You do now. One wandered in from the West Ridge last night, chewed a hole through my feed bag. Teotl laughed. So you're keeping it? Hell no. I'm naming it after you and leaving it here. Yunuen stepped outside just as the sun broke the horizon. She carried a fresh bundle of herbs tied with wild grass and handed it to Tacho. For the tea, she said. Tacho sniffed the bundle, yerba buena and crushed lime leaf. Good for stomach and nerves. Who's nervous you are, she said, already walking away. Tacho watched her go. She's going to be dangerous, he muttered. In a good way. By midday, the new well was half dug. The soil was darker, cooler, promising. Teotl paused, wiping his forehead with a rag. This land's changing. It's not, Tacho said. You are. The land's just finally listening. From across the field, Ma'ara's voice called out softly, almost lost in the wind, or maybe, boy, it always was. You just didn't speak its language yet. Teotl didn't know what to say to that, but in his chest something opened. Something deep and old and patient, like a door that had been closed for a long, long time. She didn't scream when it happened, just held the pain like it belonged to her. The goat's cries were sharp and broken, echoing across the rocky hillside. By the time Teotl reached the fence line, the animal was down legs, kicking helplessly, foam at its mouth. Blood bubbled from a wound on its side, deep and ragged like something had torn it open, not bitten. Yunuen arrived a few seconds later, barefoot, her braids loose from sleep. What happened? She whispered, already kneeling beside the goat, her hands moving without hesitation to press against the wound. Teotl shook his head. I didn't see. Heard it from the barn. Behind them, Isel climbed the ridge, eyes scanning the brush. No tracks, but the fence is clawed. Not a coyote. Too high, Mountain Lion, Teotl asked. Maybe. Maybe not. The goat jerked in Yunuen's arms, letting out another choked cry. She cradled its head, her own face tight with focus. Blood soaked through her skirt down to her knees. We need to clean it, she said. It's dying, Isel muttered. I know. We still clean it. Tacho appeared behind them, breathing hard. I saw the blood trail from the ridge. Damn thing opened her good. We can't save it, can we? Teotl asked. Tacho crouched beside Yunuen. Not this time, but she's doing more than saving. They all watched as Yunuen held the goat's trembling head, whispering words none of them recognized. Not Spanish, not even Raramuri. Just sound round and soft like river water slipping through stone. The goat stilled, its breathing slowed, then stopped. No one spoke for a long moment. Yunuen gently closed its eyes, hands stained red, and stood. She didn't want to be alone, she said. Now she's not. Tacho took off his hat. Isel looked away. Teotl felt something press against his ribs, something he didn't know how to name. Not grief, not anger, just weight. They buried the goat by the old mesquite near where the second well had been dug. Teotl hammered a wooden marker into the ground, and Yunuen placed a sprig of rosemary at the base. Ma'ara watched from the edge of the path, arms folded. You stayed, Yunuen said to her. There's more coming. Yunuen frowned. More mountain lions, more loss. She didn't say it as a threat, just as fact, like a healer stating a fever had broken only to be followed by chills. That evening, the wind changed. It carried something foul, like rust and oil, not a natural smell. Tacho sniffed it and went stiff. Who's burning trash, not trash, Isel said. That's treated wood. They followed the scent toward the southern fence line, where the ranch bordered government land, dry and unworked. A post there was smoldering, not fully on fire, but singed, its edges blackened. Someone lit this, Isel muttered. deliberate. Teotl stared at the charred wood. Why? Because someone knows you're here now, Tacho said. And not everyone likes that. Teotl bent down and saw the edges of a boot print in the ash. Larger than his, deep. Someone had stomped the ground hard. Ma'ara touched the edge of the post. Message. What kind of message? The kind people send when they don't think you belong. Yunuen stepped beside her. But we do. Ma'ara looked down at her and smiled softly. That's why it scares them. The next morning they began reinforcing the fences. Izel brought in more wire and wooden beams. Tacho checked the remaining livestock, 3 goats now, a pair of hens someone had bartered for, and Estrella who had begun trotting in short bursts across the cleared paddock. Teotl worked until his arms ached, skin cracked and peeling from sun and dust. Each post he planted felt like a statement. We are still here. Yunuen gathered leaves and ash, mixing them into a clay paste she painted along the fence line. When Teotl asked what it was for, she only said, protection. That night, they took turns watching the property in shifts. Tacho went first, then Izel. When it was Teotl's turn, he sat near the stable with the old rifle Tacho had cleaned and oiled. The stars above were sharper than glass. He thought about the goat, about how Yunuen hadn't cried, about how her hands had held that pain like it was her own. He didn't know if he could have done the same. A rustle near the brush made him stand heart-pounding, but it was only a fox slipping silently past the fence line, its eyes flashing in the dark. When dawn broke, the world looked unchanged, but something had shifted. Somebody's watching us, Izel said at breakfast. I can feel it. You're not wrong, Tacho said. The land here's old, and old land remembers grudges. Teotl frowned. Grudges against who? Anyone who changes the pattern. You're changing it. He looked around the small group, the people who had arrived one by one and stayed. We're not doing anything wrong. That doesn't matter, Ma'ara said. To some, surviving on your own terms is an insult. That day, Tacho taught Teotl how to splint a broken leg using a broomstick, a belt, and cotton gauze. They practiced on a piece of firewood wrapped in cloth, again and again until Teotl's fingers could move without thinking. You fix bones, not just fences, Tacho said. It'll matter. Yunuen spent the day with Ma'ara near the old piru tree. They boiled wild tobacco leaves and folded them into small cloth bundles, tying them with thin black thread. For protection, Ma'ara said. Not just the body, the spirit too. That night, as the wind pressed hard against the walls, Teotl dreamed of fire, of smoke rising over the hills, of a figure on the ridge watching them. And in the dream, he stood up and walked toward it, not afraid, but awake. In the morning, smoke was real, thin trails rising from the trees west of the ranch. They ran to the ridge boots, thudding over dry earth. Someone had torched a feed shack, old and unused. The fire was dying, but the message was clear. Not everyone nearby wanted them to stay. But Teotl stared at the smoke curling into the sky and felt something different this time. Not fear, resolve. He turned to Izel, whose jaw was clenched, eyes hard. We rebuild it, she nodded. Yeah, we rebuild everything. Justice doesn't always walk in wearing a badge. Sometimes it rides in on a rusted truck with tired eyes. The truck wheezed up the trail just past noon, coughing black smoke as it crawled past the burned feed shack. Dust kicked up in thick clouds. Teotl stood at the gate shovel in hand, sweat stinging his eyes. Yunuen watched from the shade, a fresh bundle of herbs drying beside her. Tacho stepped down from the porch, his eyes narrowing as the vehicle rolled to a stop. The man who stepped out was tall, with a wide-brimmed hat and a tan so deep it looked baked in. His shirt was pressed belt buckle gleaming, but his boots told a different story, scuffed, worn down at the heels. He moved slow, like someone used to being watched. Tacho grunted. That's Inspector Mario Avila. He doesn't come unless someone complains. Yunuen rose quietly. Teotl kept his grip on the shovel. Avila tipped his hat. Afternoon. No badge, Tacho asked. Didn't want to startle the kids. Tacho spat into the dirt. You being here's more startling than any badge. Avila's gaze slid to Teotl, then to the half-repaired shack behind him. Heard there was a fire. No one here said it, Teotl said. Didn't say you did. He walked toward the remains of the shack, stepping carefully over charred beams and cracked boards. He crouched and picked up a piece of singed wire fencing, held it to the light. Gasoline, he muttered. Not brush fire. Controlled start. We already know, Izel said, appearing from the barn with grease on her forearms. We just don't know who. Avila stood. Well, someone made a call. Said there were minors living unsupervised. Said there was livestock being mistreated. Said the land's not yours. He let the words sit like stones. Teotl's jaw tightened. We're not mistreating anything. Estrella's healing. The others are fed. I believe you, Avila said. But I need proof and paperwork. Tacho stepped forward. They have the journals, the father's records. He left it all. Avila turned to him. That won't stand in court, not without a legal transfer. We didn't ask the court for help, Yunuen said. We didn't ask anyone. You didn't. But someone asked about you. He looked past her toward the mountains. And someone out here wants this land quiet again. Teotl stepped closer. Who Avila didn't answer. He walked to the well and peered in, then to the corral. He counted animals aloud, checked feed, asked for water logs. Looks better than half the registered ranches I've seen, he muttered. So what happens now? Tacho asked. Avila sighed. I make a report. It goes upstairs, but you'll be watched now. By you. He shook his head. No, I've done what I can. Someone higher's gonna come. Probably a lawyer. Teotl felt his stomach drop. What kind of lawyer? The kind that looks for papers, not people. He looked back at the burned shack. My advice, get your story straight. And make friends who know how to talk in rooms with tile floors and air conditioning. He turned to leave, then paused. Also, buy a camera, take pictures, document everything. Your work, the animals, who visits. You'll need proof you belong. Tacho walked him back to the truck. I've seen your kind before, Avila said, settling into the driver's seat. The ones who fix what others throw away. But you've got ghosts around here, and they don't like noise. We're not ghosts, Tacho said. We're roots. Same thing to people who only see surface. The truck pulled away, trailing dust and a warning behind it. That evening, silence fell over the ranch, like a blanket too heavy to move. No one said what they were thinking, that someone had tried to erase them, and now the law had eyes on them too. Teotl sat beside the fire, notebook open, but he didn't write. Yunuen handed him a tin cup of warm lemon balm tea. Ma'ara says plants speak when you stop naming them, she said. What do you hear? He sipped slowly. I hear footsteps, getting closer. Then we don't run, she said. No, he agreed. We build. The next day, Izel brought a camera from town. Second-hand, plastic, but it worked. Teotl began snapping photos, each animal, every repaired board, the clean water buckets, the rows of herbs drying near the fire pit. Yunuen posed once, holding a goat expression, calm and proud. Tacho wrote receipts in a notebook with neat block letters, 1 bottle antibiotic administered, hoof trimmed, no injuries. They dated every page. Ma'ara returned at dusk with a satchel full of documents, copies of the father's will land purchase records, a faded map with his signature scrawled across the bottom. "It's not enough," she said, "but it's something." Yunuen tucked the papers into her satchel. "Then we keep adding to it." That night, as they sat by the fire, Isel sharpened her machete with slow, deliberate strokes. "They'll try again," she said. "Not just with fire, let them," Teotl said. "We're not leaving." In the distance, coyotes yipped, but the wind was calm and the stars stayed steady. Ma'ara looked up from her basket of dried flowers. "You ready for what's next?" "No," Teotl admitted. "But I'm still going." She smiled. "Good answer. Not all knives cut flesh, some slice through peace quiet, and everything you thought was safe." The letter arrived folded in thirds clean and clinical, tucked into a yellow envelope with a return address from a law office in Ciudad Juarez. Isel had picked it up from town on her way back with feed. She handed it to Teotl with a look that said she already knew what it was. He turned it over in his hands without opening it. Yunuen stood nearby, her fingers knotted into the hem of her dress. Ma'ara sat at the edge of the porch, silent eyes half closed, like she could already feel the weight of the contents. Teotl opened the envelope and unfolded the pages. The letterhead was stiff, lined with sharp fonts and legal language. Notice of pending claim. Request for immediate vacation of property. Formal ownership dispute. Estella's name was listed clearly. She was claiming the land, arguing that as the legal spouse of their deceased father, she was entitled to the property, livestock, and all current holdings. The letter didn't mention the abandonment, the lies, or the fact that she had left 2 children to die in the desert. Just the facts that mattered in court. "I thought she was gone," Teotl said quietly. "People like that don't disappear," Isel muttered. "They wait. Then strike when it costs the most." Tacho arrived not long after. He read the letter with a deep frown and handed it back without comment. "Can she really take it?" Yunuen asked. "Depends what she proves," Tacho said. "If she's got forged papers or even just the marriage certificate, it could cause a mess." "She has no soul," Yunuen whispered. "She never did." Ma'ara didn't argue. That night the fire burned low. No one spoke much. Even the goats seemed quieter, huddled in their pen. Estrella walked slowly around the fence tail, flicking her limp, nearly gone now. Teotl sat beside the fire with the letter in his lap, the paper already worn at the corners from how many times he'd folded and unfolded it. Every time he looked at it, he felt like the air got tighter around his chest, like someone had reached into his lungs and squeezed. "What do we do?" he finally asked. "We fight," Yunuen said, with what he snapped. "She has lawyers. She has paper. We have a camera and a few old notebooks. We have truth." He looked at her, stung by her calm. "That doesn't matter in a court," he said. "You heard what Avila said." Ma'ara reached over and put her hand on his. "Truth matters more than you think. But not if it stays hidden." Tacho stood and dusted off his pants. "There's someone in town. A woman named Alma Rivas. She's fought land claims before. Helped 2 widows keep their homes after their husbands died. She's sharp, scary smart, and she hates people who prey on kids." Teotl's voice was tight. "Will she help us?" "She might," Tacho said. "If you ask her yourself." The next morning they hitched Estrella to the small cart Isel had helped repair. Teotl dressed in his cleanest shirt, tucked into patched jeans. Yunuen wore her long braid looped twice the same way their mother used to wear hers. They rode into town under a sky full of sharp sun and dry wind. Every bump on the dirt road rattled the bones of the cart, but Estrella walked steady. Alma Rivas's office was on the 2nd floor above a bakery that smelled like anise and cinnamon. Her door was open. She looked up from her desk when they knocked. She was younger than Tacho had described, mid-30s, maybe sharp-lined jaw gold hoop earrings and eyes that missed nothing. "You're the kids," she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am," Teodel said. "We need your help." She gestured to the two chairs in front of her desk. "Sit." She read the letter while they waited, occasionally pausing to underline or shake her head. "Classic maneuver," she muttered. "Wait until they've built something, then strike when it's visible." "She left us there," Yunuen said. "She didn't even say goodbye. Just drove away and never looked back." "Do you have anything that proves it?" "Just our word." Alma looked at her. "That's not nothing. But we'll need more." She pulled out a yellow legal pad and began listing what they'd need to find: signed letters from their father, photos from the time Estella was gone, any medical or school records showing they weren't in her care, witnesses, neighbors, anyone who had seen them alone. "Build a wall of truth," she said. "Brick by brick." Back at the ranch, the others were already organizing. Ma'ara unearthed a shoebox full of receipts their father had kept: feed store bills, handwritten notes to teachers, lists of expenses for the children, none of which had Estella's name. Tacho called a retired rancher who remembered delivering hay to the property after the mother disappeared. "I saw those kids working alone," he said. "Didn't see a woman there for months." Izel found a flash drive in an old drawer in the barn. On it were photos, grainy and faded but clear enough. Teotl and Yunuen, barefoot, sunburned, hauling buckets. No Estella. They took it all to Alma. She looked it over carefully, laying everything out on her wide desk like a puzzle. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it's good. It's real. Will that be enough?" Alma looked at Teotl, her expression softening. "You're already standing on the land. That counts for more than you know." They left with instructions to make more copies, keep everything in fireproof tins, and never let Estella or anyone tied to her inside the ranch again, not even for a second. "She can twist anything," Alma warned. "Even silence." Back home, they posted new signs on the fence. "Private land. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Yunuen burned sage along the property line, burying small bundles of herbs at each corner for protection. Teotl stood on the porch at dusk, watching the horizon. He didn't say anything, but he felt it like a storm building behind the mountains, heavy and full of teeth. "She's coming," he said. Ma'ara, standing beside him, nodded. "She's coming. But so are we. Some poison doesn't come in bottles. It smiles, wears perfume, and calls itself family." Estella arrived in a rented black SUV with shiny chrome handles and city plates that didn't belong on country roads. She stepped out like she owned the dust beneath her heels, her sunglasses still on lips, glossed blouse too clean for the wind that blew in from the canyons. Teotl was in the paddock with Estrella when he saw her, his hands clenched around the brush he'd been using. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched her step around the cracked stone gate as if she'd never left, like she had every right to be there. Yunuen came out of the stable, her braid loose, a streak of clay on her face from mixing poultices. Her eyes found the figure instantly, and her body went still. Estella opened her arms. "Mis hijos," she said. Her voice was warm. Her voice was poison. "You're not our mother," Yunuen said, before Estella could take another step. Teotl walked out from behind the fence, silent. Estrella followed, ears pricked. Estella dropped her arms, slowly sighing. "You're angry. I understand. That woman filled your head with, 'You left us in the desert,'" Yunuen said. "You didn't even look back." "I was grieving," Estella replied. "Your father, he died, and I was overwhelmed." Teotl's voice was low. You waited until we made something of this place. Then you came back. Estella's face twitched. I came to make sure you were okay. No, Tacho said from the porch, stepping down rifle in hand, though not aimed. You came because someone told you this land might be worth something again. She turned to him, smile tight. I don't know who you are, but this is a family matter. I'm the one who fed them when you didn't, and I'll be the one to walk you back to your car if needed. Estella's eyes shifted, calculating. You don't want this to go to court, she said finally. It'll take months. Years. They'll ask hard questions, and children like them don't do well under pressure. Yunuen stepped forward. You're not scaring us. Estella looked at her, really looked, and for a moment her expression cracked. Just slightly. You look like her, she said. Your mother. Yunuen didn't blink. She never looked like you. I'm offering a solution, Estella said, shifting again. You can stay here, but I manage the ranch. We put it in my name legally. I'll even set aside a trust for your future. No, Teodel said. You'll lose everything. We already lost everything, he said. But we built it back. Without you. Ma'ara emerged from the shadows of the herb shed. She didn't say a word, just stood behind Yunuen like a wall of stone and bone and smoke. Estella noticed. Her nostrils flared. This isn't over, she said. No, Ma'ara said. It's only begun. Estella turned and walked back to her SUV. She didn't slam the door. She didn't peel out. She drove slow, deliberate, like she wanted them to watch. And they did. After she left, the silence was thick. Teodel sat on the porch steps. Yunuen sat beside him. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I thought she'd look smaller, he said. She's still the same size, Yunuen whispered. But we're bigger now. That night, Alma Rivas called. She served her own motion today, Alma said. Filed for emergency possession. She wants the court to freeze your rights until the case is decided. Can they do that? Teodel asked. Not if I prove abandonment. But I need more. She's lawyered up. She's going after character. Ma'ara took the phone. She'll say the children were unsupervised, Ma'ara said. She'll say they were wild, unfit to manage land. She'll smear me. She already is, Alma said. There's a petition circulating in town. Keep the land safe from illegal caretakers. She's leaning on prejudice now. Let her, Ma'ara said. The roots go deeper than their fear. They started gathering letters from people in the valley. Small ranchers, old women who bought healing salves from Yunuen, one school teacher who remembered their mother. I saw them walk barefoot to town after Estella vanished, the teacher wrote. I gave them water. Tacho called in favors. Izel found a friend who worked in the permit office, someone who pulled archived forms showing the land's water rights were paid for by their father, not Estella. Yunuen worked harder than ever. She taught herself to read court filings by flashlight. She boiled herbs until her fingers wrinkled and cracked. She treated a neighbor's sick calf. She sat with a woman losing her eyesight and helped her thread a needle just by touch. I'll bury her in truth, she whispered one night, grinding roots into powder. Not lies, not threats, just truth. Teodel built a new chicken coop. Stronger, taller. He documented every nail, every board. He showed up, every morning without fail. On the fourth day, after Estella's visit, a man in a suit came with a clipboard and a badge. He said he was there to assess the property. He didn't smile. Izel met him at the gate. You got a warrant? He didn't, but he waited just beyond the fence watching. Ma'ara walked out with her shawl, her eyes rimmed with soot. She stared at him until he left. They're circling, Teodel said that night. They always circle, Ma'ara replied. That's why we stay standing, In the days that followed, they kept working. Not just surviving, building. Living. Because every hour they stood, they proved what no letter could. They belonged. Some victories don't roar, they whisper through dry soil and stay standing when the storm moves on. It rained the night before the hearing. Not hard, but steady. Enough to soften the dirt and fill the air with the smell of sagebrush and wet earth. Enough to make the roof leak in 3 places. Yunuen put out bowls and old coffee cans to catch the drips. She didn't complain. Neither did Teotl. They both stood in the kitchen, quiet clothes laid out for the morning. Teotl's shirt was pressed one of his father's old ones, too big at the shoulders, but clean. Yunuen wore a long skirt woven by Ma'ara's cousin. It had red stitching at the hem, the same red their mother used to sew into every blanket. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded. "No, me neither." At dawn, Alma arrived in a beat-up sedan, her briefcase buckled and packed with copies of every paper they had collected. Her earrings swung when she turned. "You've got 20 statements," she said. 6 affidavits, and a handwritten note from the old school teacher that just about made me cry. She paused before starting the car. "But the judge won't care about any of that unless you speak. You have to show them who you are, not just what you've done." Teotl looked out the window as the ranch disappeared behind them. "Then we tell the truth." The courthouse was gray and cold, everything inside it polished and quiet, like people were scared of echoing. Yunuen clutched her notebook to her chest. Teotl walked beside her, back straight, jaw tight. Estella was already there. She wore heels, a navy skirt suit, and carried a designer purse that didn't match the dust on her car. Her lawyer was tall, gray-haired, with a voice like gravel. He barely looked at the children. The hearing room wasn't big. 12 chairs. 1 judge. No jury. Just paper arguments and eyes. The judge, Doña Inés Salvatierra, was older, with silver hair pulled into a tight braid and glasses perched low on her nose. Her expression was unreadable. Alma spoke first. She laid out the story piece by piece, steady and unshaken. She handed over the journal, the pictures, the receipts. She passed around the affidavits, the school records, the witness letters. "The petitioner abandoned the children," Alma said clearly. "They survived alone, restored the land, and now she returns only after it gains value." Estella's lawyer stood slow and confident. "There is no record of legal guardianship, no court-filed custody, no formal inheritance. These are minors managing livestock without supervision. This property is not in their name. It must be returned to the legal widow." Estella didn't look at them while he spoke. She kept her hands folded neatly on the table, nodding at the right moments. Yunuen was the first to speak. She stood without prompting, her voice clear but soft. "My name is Yunuen," she said. "I'm 13. I am Raramuri like my mother. I've lived on that land since I was born." The judge gestured for her to continue. "My father died," she said. "Then Estella left us. She said she was getting medicine. She never came back. My brother was 9. I was 6. She opened her notebook and read the first line their father had written in his journal. "Don't wait for perfect. Survive first, then shape the world." She looked up. "We survived. We fixed the corral. We planted food. We dug a second well. I healed a goat. He rebuilt the walls. We made it ours again." Teotl stood next. He didn't speak right away, just stared at Estella. "You could have taken us with you," he said. "You didn't. You could have come back sooner. You didn't. You only came when the land looked worth something." Estella's lawyer objected. "That's emotional conjecture." But the judge waved her hand. "Let him speak." We're not stealing anything, Teotl said. We're protecting what was left to us. Estella finally looked at him. Her voice was too smooth. I thought you were better off without me. I was grieving. I didn't know how to raise children alone. You didn't try, Yunuen said. You never asked how we lived. You didn't care until you saw what we built. The room went still. Alma closed with a single sentence. If blood alone gives rights, then justice has no home. The judge didn't rule immediately. She said she'd issue a written decision within 5 days. But as they walked out, Alma's expression was tight with hope. You did good, she said, no matter what. Back at the ranch, the wind picked up. Clouds gathered again over the ridge. They repaired the last of the chicken wire, patched the stable roof, and checked the feed barrels like always. No one spoke about the court. They didn't have to. The silence was different now. Waiting, but not afraid. That night, Teotl sat beside the fire. Yunuen braided herbs together under the lantern. Izel cleaned the tools. Ma'ara stirred tea, humming something old and wordless. Tacho sharpened his knife slow and steady. Even if she wins the paper, he said, she'll never hold the land. Why, Yunuen asked. Because she never listened to it, he said. And the land only stays with those who hear it. The wind carried the scent of rain again, but no one moved inside. They stayed shoulder to shoulder beneath the open sky. Not hiding, not bracing, just standing, like they always had. A man's name may fade from stone, but his work never leaves the land. The envelope arrived just before sunrise, slipped beneath the gate with no knock, no warning. The edges were damp with dew, the paper thick, official. Alma had promised she would call the minute a decision came, but someone had beaten her to it. Teotl found it when he stepped out to feed the chickens, boots still unlaced, the morning barely broken open. He didn't open it right away. He stood on the porch, envelope in hand, the weight of it settling into his spine. Yunuen stepped out moments later, her hair still damp from washing shawl wrapped tight across her shoulders. Is that it? She asked. Teotl nodded. They gathered everyone, Ma'ara, Tacho, Izel. No one said anything. Just moved into the kitchen, where the light came in low and gold across the table. Estrella stood in the paddock, grazing peacefully, as though nothing in the world was about to shift. Teotl opened the envelope with steady hands. He read silently, eyes moving line by line, his face unreadable. Then he passed the letter to Ma'ara. She read it aloud. In light of presented testimony, community statements, and documented proof of abandonment, the court recognizes the occupants, Teotl and Yunuen Nahua Terrazas, as rightful residents and stewards of the property. The petitioner's claim is denied. Full rights of occupation and land use are to remain with current caretakers until such time as legal transfer can be formalized under supervision. Silence followed. It broke with Yunuen's breath, a single shaking exhale, half sob, half laughter. They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just sat in it. The quiet, the knowing, the moment where survival gave way to something like peace. Tacho wiped at his eye with the back of his hand. You did it. No, Teotl said softly. We did. The weight hadn't lifted, it had transformed into something heavier and more permanent but solid beneath their feet. No longer afraid, now responsible. Ma'ara looked at them both. It's yours now, not because someone gave it, because you earned it. By noon, word had spread. A neighbor rode in with a bag of oranges and 2 bolts of cloth. Another brought 3 hens. A woman from town came with a jar of honey and hugged Yunuen without a word. They weren't celebrating a court win. They were acknowledging what they already knew, that these children had done what others couldn't. They had stayed. They had rebuilt. Teotl spent the rest of the day walking the land, not checking it, just being in it. The soil was firm underfoot, dark with yesterday's rain. The mesquite trees were greening. The second well held steady. He stopped at the grave under the pyru tree and knelt beside it. There was no stone, just a flat piece of wood with his father's name carved by hand. The letters were worn, but still visible. "I don't know if you'd be proud," he said aloud, "but I hope you'd see we listened." A breeze moved through the branches above him, slow and soft like a breath. When he returned to the house, Yunuen was waiting on the porch steps, braiding thin strips of red cloth into a rope. "What's that for?" he asked. "For the gate," she said. "It's ours now. I want it to feel like home." He sat beside her, took another strip, and began braiding too. Behind them, Ma'ara swept the porch. Tacho fixed a cracked water pipe. Ezel worked with a new set of hinges for the barn doors. It wasn't a victory parade. It was maintenance. It was care. That night the fire was lit high, and Ma'ara prepared a stew with wild onion and goat meat. Neighbors stayed late sitting on buckets and makeshift benches. They told stories about the land, about the floods, the droughts, the night the sky turned orange from lightning that didn't strike. One old man said, "I remember your father when he first came. He couldn't tell an ox from a mule, but he worked hard. Too hard. That man didn't know how to stop." Teotl smiled. "Sounds familiar." The man nodded. "You've got his eyes, but your way's quieter." Yunuen handed him a bowl of stew. "Quiet works." Before dawn, after the last of the firewood was reduced to embers, Teotl walked out to the farthest fence post, the one they hadn't had time to replace. It leaned slightly tired from years of holding its weight alone. He braced it, straightened it, and drove the stake deeper into the soil. Then he wrapped Yunuen's braided red rope around it. A marker, a promise. The morning would bring work like any other. The feed still needed measuring. The soil still needed turning. The animals still needed watching. But now it wasn't just about survival. It was about staying. Rooted. They had built something. Not a ranch, not just a home, but proof. That love and sweat and stubbornness could outlast betrayal, abandonment, even the law. It wasn't just theirs. It belonged to the land now, too. To give back what saved you is the only real kind of wealth. The sun had just risen when the first cart arrived, rattling, wooden-wheeled, pulled by a skinny horse with a worn blanket for a saddle. A boy jumped off the back, no older than 10, barefoot and wide-eyed. He clutched his little sister's hand like it was the only thing keeping them from blowing away. Teotl stepped out from the barn, wiping grease from his hands. He didn't ask questions, just pointed to the water barrel and the bench under the jacaranda tree. By noon, 4 more arrived. A woman with 3 kids, one of them coughing so hard he nearly doubled over. An elder with a limp and a satchel full of leaves. A pregnant girl with a chipped tooth and eyes that didn't blink much. Yunuen met them with blankets, warm soup, and words that sounded like home, even if they hadn't been home for a long time. They never said refugees, never said charity, just people, neighbors, kin even if the blood didn't match. The land made room. By evening, the lower fields were filled with soft talking and tired breathing. Fires were lit in tight circles, babies slept in hammocks, chickens clucked near the goat pens without fuss. Ma'ara walked through the field, slowly stopping at each campfire to lay down small packets of herbs, tying red string on every corner post. "So the wind knows you're safe now," she told them. Teotl stood at the edge of it all, shoulders tight. "They're staying," he asked. Yunuen didn't hesitate. They're healing, but this was ours. The ranch. We finally got it back. She looked at him carefully, eyes steady. And now we pass it forward, like the land passed it to us. He nodded slowly, the words thick in his chest. It wasn't that he didn't want to help. It was that fear still lived in the cracks of his bones. Fear of not having enough, not being enough. But as he watched a boy laugh for the first time in who knew how long, chasing a chicken across the dry patch near the corral, something inside him began to quiet. The ranch didn't shrink when it made room for others. It expanded. They called it La Casa de la Raíz, the house of the root. Not a foundation, not an organization, just a place where people could dig in and be. Ma'ara taught the women how to make poultices and fire cider. Tasho built a rain catchment system with repurposed gutter pipes and an old tub. Izel taught a group of girls how to fix a fence without losing a finger. Teotl started keeping a new notebook, one page for every family, not names or numbers, just stories. Came on a Thursday with only her mother's spoon. Didn't speak for 3 days, then asked for more tortillas. Laughed when the wind knocked over the clothesline. Alma came to visit one weekend and walked the fields with her hands behind her back, amazed. "I knew you were stubborn," she said to Teotl, "but I didn't think you'd be generous too." He grinned. "Turns out those go together." She brought legal forms this time. "We're going to turn this into something permanent. There's land use grants, cooperative protections, even clean water funding if we play it right." Yunuen helped fill them out, pausing now and then to translate for the older neighbors who couldn't read well. She used simple words, gentle words. No one asked to leave. Even after the fever went away, the rains came and the court papers were filed and done, they stayed. Built, helped, repaired roofs, planted seeds. Estrella wandered freely now, no limp, her coat glossy with good feed and kindness. She became the children's favorite, let them braid her mane, walk under her belly, fall asleep against her side. One afternoon, a young boy asked, "Was she always here?" Teotl knelt beside him. "No, she came when things broke." "Like us, yeah," he said. "Exactly like that." Yunuen painted a sign and nailed it above the barn. The letters were crooked, bright blue, chipped already from the wind. Bienvenidos. If you have roots, you belong. No one asked where it came from. They all just nodded. Some nights when the fires burned low and the laughter faded to murmurs, Ma'ara would sit and tell stories. Not legends, but real ones of women who birthed children during dust storms, of boys who sang to their dying horses, of elders who saved seeds in their pockets through war. She told their story too, but never used names. Once there were 2 children, she would begin, left by someone who should have stayed. But they did not wait for rescue. They built instead. One night, a girl no older than 6 asked, did they win? Ma'ara smiled. They didn't win or lose. They stayed. Teotl would listen from the shadows, notebook in hand. He didn't write during those stories. He just listened like the land did. Eventually, the porch was rebuilt with room for 10 chairs. The fence doubled. A small school was added near the well where children learned letters drawn in ash on stones. And still the ranch held them all. Not without hardship. The pipes still burst. Animals got sick. People argued. But no one ran. That was the miracle. They stayed. Because the root isn't what's seen. It's what holds everything steady when storms tear through and the world forgets you were ever planted there in the first place. And now Teotl understood. His father's words weren't just about surviving. They were instructions. Don't wait for perfect. Survive first. Then shape the world. So they shaped it. and gave it away.